My own sister. The one who shared my childhood, my secrets, my life. She just stood there, a ghost of a smile on her face, while my wedding, what was supposed to be our family's day of joy, just crumbled around me. And it wasn't an accident. Oh no, it was a meticulously crafted revenge, and I'd walked right into her trap, completely blind to the venom that had been brewing for years. This isn't just a story about a wedding gone wrong, it's about how the person I should have trusted most in the world became my greatest enemy. My wedding to Mark was supposed to be a dream come true. We'd planned it for over a year, a beautiful autumn ceremony at a vineyard, fairy lights twinkling everywhere, our families and friends all gathered. I'm Sarah, by the way. And Mark, well, Mark is everything I'd ever hoped for. He's kind, he's funny, and he loves me in a way that still makes me catch my breath. Growing up, my relationship with my younger sister, Emily, was complicated. Yeah, that's the polite way of saying it. To the outside world, we looked close. We were sisters, right? But underneath all that, there was always this undercurrent of competition, mostly from her side, I think. I was the older one, often praised for how well I did in school or, later on, my career choices. Emily, though she was incredibly talented in her own artistic ways, always seemed to feel like she was living in my shadow. Her successes, and trust me, she had plenty, never seemed to be enough for her. Little comments here and there, a backhanded compliment dressed up as sisterly advice, a subtle way of undermining my confidence, those were her specialties. I usually brushed them off. Told myself it was just Emily being Emily. You know, classic sibling stuff, right? Or so I thought. When Mark proposed, I was absolutely ecstatic. I remember calling Emily, my voice shaking with happiness, just expecting her to share my joy. Her congratulations felt thin. Forced, even. Wow, Sarah, that's quick. You sure about this? She'd said. I still remember the chill that went down my spine, but I just dismissed it. She was probably just surprised, I told myself. As the wedding planning kicked off, Emily offered to help. Eagerly, actually. I want to be involved in every step, sis. This is so exciting, she'd exclaimed. I was really touched. Maybe this was a new chapter for us, a chance for her to genuinely be happy for me. So, I made her my maid of honor. That decision would soon become my biggest regret. At first, the planning stages seemed fine. Emily was full of ideas, and some of them were genuinely good. She was particularly enthusiastic about the venue, the dress, the flowers. Looking back now, her enthusiasm wasn't so much about support as it was about control. She'd subtly steer me away from things I truly loved, suggesting alternatives that were just slightly off, slightly not me. Oh, that dress is nice, Sarah, but don't you think it makes your shoulders look a bit broad, or that caterer? I heard a whisper they're not very reliable. Little seeds of doubt, planted so skillfully I barely even noticed. My mother, always trying to keep the peace, would say, Sarah, honey, Emily's just trying to help. She wants your day to be perfect. Perfect for whom, I wonder now. The first major red flag, the one I just couldn't ignore, popped up about 3 months before the wedding. We were finalizing the guest list. Mark and I had decided on a relatively intimate affair, about 100 people. Emily, however, had a different vision. She handed me her list, nearly 50 additional names, mostly her own friends, some of whom I barely knew, and a few distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. Emily, this is a lot, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Mark and I have a budget, and the venue has capacity limits, you know? Her face tightened. So, my friends aren't important enough? After all the help I've been giving you? I thought this was a family celebration, Sarah. Or is it just about you and Mark? Her voice was laced with that familiar accusation, the one that always made me feel guilty, like I was being selfish. That's not fair, Emily, I replied. Of course, your closest friends are on the list. But this isn't a party for your entire social circle. It's our wedding. The argument escalated quickly. It wasn't just about the guest list anymore. It was about her feeling slighted, overlooked. You always do this, Sarah, she yelled, her eyes flashing. You always make everything about you. My own sister's wedding, and I can't even have my closest friends there to support me. Support her? That struck me as really odd. Why would she need an army of supporters at my wedding? The fight ended with her storming out, leaving me completely shaken. Later that week, I found out from our cousin that Emily had been complaining to other family members, twisting the story to make it sound like I was deliberately excluding her and being a total bridezilla. She was painting me as the villain, a theme I'd later realize was pretty central to her whole plan. This wasn't just a simple disagreement, it felt calculated. It was the first time I truly felt a chill of suspicion, a gut feeling that something much more sinister was at play. After the guest list fiasco, things seemed to quiet down for a bit. Emily apologized, one of those saccharine sweet, insincere apologies that I, just wanting peace, accepted. But the unease lingered. Her help continued, but now I was more wary, more observant. And the more I observed, the more I saw. She'd accidentally spill coffee on a stack of addressed invitations, forcing a frantic reprint and delay. Luckily, it was only a small batch. She'd offer to liaise with vendors, and then crucial details would get miscommunicated. The florist would get the wrong shade for the bridesmaid bouquets, the baker would have an outdated flavor preference for the cake samples. Each incident was presented as an innocent mistake. Oh my God, Sarah, I am so sorry. I must have written it down wrong. My brain is everywhere lately. Too many mistakes. Too many apologies that didn't quite reach her eyes. Mark started to notice too. Are you sure Emily's okay? He asked one evening. She seems, almost like she's trying to make things difficult, but in a way you can't quite pin down. He was right. It was like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Each small act of sabotage, on its own, could be explained away. But together, they formed a really disturbing pattern. My best friend, Chloe, who was also a bridesmaid, was more direct. Sarah, I don't trust her, she said bluntly after Emily forgot to pick up my altered veil from the seamstress, nearly causing a meltdown a week before the bridal shower. There's something really off about all these accidents. It's like she's enjoying this, the stress it's causing you. The stress was immense. My dream wedding was turning into a logistical nightmare, an emotional minefield. I was constantly on edge, double-checking everything Emily touched, trying to anticipate her next move. Sleep became a luxury. My excitement was replaced with this gnawing anxiety. This wasn't just incompetence, this felt like a deliberate campaign to wear me down. I started to feel like I was going crazy, questioning my own judgment. Was I being paranoid? Was I misinterpreting her actions because of our past friction? Then came the incident with the wedding dress. I'd found the dress. A beautiful, elegant gown that made me feel like a princess. Emily had been with me when I chose it, and her reaction had been surprisingly positive, or so I'd thought. A few weeks before the wedding, I went for my final fitting. Emily insisted on coming. While I was in the changing room, she was left alone with the dress for just a few minutes. When I came out, the bridal consultant gasped. There, on the pristine white satin skirt, was a small, almost invisible tear, right near the hem, but in a place that would be noticeable if it frayed. And next to it, a tiny, faint smudge of what looked suspiciously like makeup. Emily feigned horror. Oh, Sarah. How did that happen? It must have snagged on something. Or maybe it was there before? The consultant was meticulous and assured me it wasn't there when she'd prepped the dress. The tear was small, fixable, but the intent behind it screamed at me. It was too precise, too subtle to be a random accident. It was a message, asterisk I can hurt you, even here, even with something this precious. Asterisk that night, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I started to think about why. Why would Emily do this? I'd read stories online, on forums, about family betrayals at weddings, the narcissistic behavior, the deep-seated jealousies, the desire to humiliate. Was her lifelong feeling of being overshadowed culminating in this elaborate, cruel revenge? Revenge for what, exactly? For being born first? For being happy? Driven by a desperate need for answers, I did something I'm not proud of, but I felt I had to. Emily had been using my old laptop for some of her wedding-related tasks, as hers was supposedly in the shop. I knew her password. Late that night, with my heart pounding, I opened it. I went straight to her email and social media messages. What I found made my blood run cold. It wasn't just careless mistakes or passive aggression. It was a plot. A deliberate, calculated plot to ruin my wedding day. There were messages between Emily and a couple of her more resentful friends I'd refused to add to the guest list. They were laughing about the little mishaps. One message from Emily read, "Just wait for the reception. The speech I'm planning will be the showstopper. She'll finally understand what it feels like to be humiliated." Another detailed a plan to accidentally spill red wine on my dress during the reception. There were even notes, a draft of her maid of honor speech. It wasn't a tribute to our sisterhood, it was a character assassination, full of twisted half-truths and outright lies designed to embarrass me and Mark in front of everyone we knew. It mentioned things from my past, private things, twisted to make me look foolish, unstable, and even unfaithful. This was the cruel revenge plot my gut had been screaming about. She planned to hijack my wedding, to make it her stage for vengeance. I just sat there, staring at the screen, feeling a mixture of nausea and a cold, hard anger. The sister I knew, or thought I knew, was capable of such calculated cruelty. The betrayal was profound, like a knife to the heart. All those years of simmering resentment had boiled over into this monstrosity. Can you even imagine discovering something like this, just days before your wedding? The person you chose as your maid of honor, your own sister, actively plotting to destroy your happiness. It's the kind of story you read about online and think, that could never happen to me. If you've ever dealt with extreme family drama or sibling rivalry that's crossed a serious line, I truly feel for you. Let me know in the comments if you've experienced anything even remotely similar. Sometimes just knowing you're not alone really helps. And if you want to hear how this nightmare unfolded, and what I decided to do, make sure you're subscribed and have those notifications turned on, because the climax of this story is something you won't want to miss. The next few days were a blur of forced smiles and absolute inner turmoil. I didn't confront Emily immediately. I needed a plan. My first instinct was to call off the wedding, to hide, to just run away. But then, a different feeling took over. Anger. A cold, righteous anger. She wasn't going to win. She wasn't going to destroy the happiest day of my life, a day I was supposed to share with Mark, the man I loved, who deserved none of this. I wouldn't let her turn my wedding into her twisted theater of revenge. She wanted to expose me? No, I was going to expose her. I saved copies of all the messages, the draft of her vile speech. I talked to Mark, showed him everything. He was horrified, furious, but unbelievably supportive. "We'll face this together, Sarah," he said, his resolve matching mine. "She's not ruining our day." We then confided in my parents. They were devastated, initially not wanting to believe it. My mother cried, refusing to accept that her darling Emily could be so malicious. "There must be a misunderstanding, Sarah." But the evidence was undeniable. The screenshots of Emily's own words, her cruel intentions laid bare. Their shock slowly turned to a heartbroken acceptance, then a quiet fury of their own. The morning of the wedding arrived. I was a strange mix of nerves, sadness, and this steely determination. As I got ready with my bridesmaids, keeping Emily out of the inner sanctum for as long as possible, I felt a strange calm. Chloe, my loyal friend, held my hand. "You've got this," she whispered. The plan was set. The ceremony itself would proceed as normally as possible. I wanted those sacred vows with Mark, that moment of pure love, to be untainted. The exposure would happen at the reception, just before the speeches were due to begin. My father, usually a man of few words but immense integrity, agreed to be the one to do it. He felt it was his responsibility, as her father, to address her actions. The ceremony was beautiful. Walking down the aisle towards Mark, seeing the love in his eyes, for a few precious moments, I actually forgot about the storm that was about to break. Emily stood there, as my maid of honor, a picture of pure innocence. The irony was sickening. At the reception, the atmosphere was festive, guests laughing, music playing. I watched Emily, saw her subtly checking her clutch bag where I knew she had her note cards for that venomous speech. She looked excited, a predatory glint in her eye. She thought her moment of triumph was near. Then, as the MC announced it was time for speeches, my father stood up. He walked to the microphone, his face grim. The room quieted, everyone expecting the usual heartfelt father of the bride speech. What they got was something else entirely. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice strong, resonating through the room. "Mark, Sarah, we are so happy for you both. Today is a celebration of your love, a love that is honest and true." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the guests before landing squarely on Emily. Her smile faltered, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "However," my father continued, his voice hardening, "it has come to our attention, with irrefutable proof, that someone in this room, someone who should have been a pillar of support and joy, has instead been plotting to maliciously sabotage this day. To intentionally inflict pain and humiliation on her own sister." A shocked silence fell over the room. You could hear a pin drop. Emily's face went pale. Her eyes darted around, from me to my father, then to our mother, who looked at her with such profound disappointment. "We have discovered," my father's voice was heavy with sorrow and anger, "a cruel and calculated plan by my younger daughter, Emily, to use her role as maid of honor not to celebrate, but to destroy. We have seen messages, draft speeches, a plan filled with lies and malice, intended to ruin her sister's happiness out of what we can only assume is a deep-seated and frankly, ugly, jealousy." He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His words, delivered with such pained authority, were devastating. He didn't share all the sordid details of her planned speech, he didn't need to air all our dirty laundry. But he made it unequivocally clear what she had intended. He spoke of the pain of discovering such a betrayal within his own family. Emily looked like she'd been slapped. Her face crumpled. She tried to speak, to interrupt, "Dad, no. That's not. It's not true." But her voice was weak, trembling. No one was looking at her with sympathy. They were looking at her with shock, with disdain. "Emily," my father said, his voice breaking slightly, "your mother and I are heartbroken. And we are ashamed. This is not how we raised you." He then turned to the guests. "We apologize that this shadow has been cast upon such a joyous occasion. But we could not allow this deception to continue. Sarah and Mark deserve a day filled with love, not treachery." He then looked at Emily one last time. "You need to leave. Now." The silence that followed my father's words was thick, just heavy. All eyes were on Emily. Her face was a mask of disbelief, then fury, then utter humiliation as the weight of her public exposure crashed down on her. Some of her friends, the ones she'd conspired with, looked horrified and tried to shrink into their seats. Others, more distant family and friends, just looked shocked and disgusted. Emily stood frozen for a moment, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then, the dam broke. "How could you do this to me?" she shrieked, her voice cracking, tears of rage and shame streaming down her face. "It's my sister's wedding, you're supposed to be on my side. She's always been the perfect one, always had everything. You don't know what it's like." It was a pathetic outburst, a complete confirmation of the very jealousy my father had just spoken of. There was no sympathy in the room. A few of our uncles quietly moved towards her. She wasn't physically forced out, But the collective weight of disapproval, the sheer shame of her actions being laid bare, was enough. She grabbed her clutch, her hateful speech notes presumably still inside, and practically fled the reception hall, sobbing. A couple of her closest friends, the ones implicated by her earlier messages if anyone knew the full context, followed her out, heads bowed. The tension in the room was palpable. For a few moments, everyone just sat there, stunned. Then, Mark, my incredible husband, stood up. He took the microphone. "Well," he said, with a small, wry smile, "that was unexpected. But what my father-in-law said is true. Today is about love, and Sarah and I are not going to let anything, or anyone, take that away from us." He raised his glass. "To my beautiful bride, Sarah. I love you more than words can say. And to all of you who are here to genuinely celebrate with us, thank you. Let's try and enjoy the rest of this evening." His words broke the spell. There was a hesitant applause, then it grew stronger. People started talking again, though in hushed tones at first. The band, after a quick, bewildered look, started playing a soft melody. Slowly, very slowly, the atmosphere began to shift. It wasn't the carefree, joyous celebration I had originally envisioned, not entirely. There was an undercurrent of shock, of sadness for our family. But there was also such an outpouring of support for Mark and me. Friends and family came up to us, offering hugs, words of comfort, and condemning Emily's actions. My mother was heartbroken, trying to put on a brave face, but her eyes were red-rimmed. My father looked older, burdened by what he'd had to do, but he was resolute. The perfect day was irrevocably scarred. But in a strange way, a weight had been lifted from me. The truth was out. The poison had been drawn. I hadn't been humiliated as Emily planned, she had been exposed for who she truly was. The rest of the wedding reception was subdued, but definitely not ruined. We danced our first dance, Mark holding me close, whispering words of love and reassurance. We cut the cake, thankfully, not one Emily might have had a chance to sabotage. We talked to our guests, thanking them for their support. So many expressed their shock and sadness over Emily's behavior, but also their admiration for how we handled it. It was clear that Emily's actions had backfired spectacularly. Instead of turning people against me, she had completely isolated herself. In the weeks and months that followed, the fallout was significant. Emily was, for all intents and purposes, ostracized by a large portion of the family. She sent a few tearful, self-pitying texts to me and our parents, trying to justify her actions, blaming her unhappiness, blaming me, blaming everyone but herself. There was no genuine remorse, no real understanding of the depth of the hurt she had caused. We didn't respond. What was there to say? My relationship with Emily is gone. Severed. It's a painful thing to admit. There's a part of me that mourns the sister I thought I had, or maybe the sister I wished I had. But the person who plotted such a cruel betrayal? I don't know her, and frankly, I don't want to. You know, you sometimes read stories about family rifts that are just too deep to heal, especially when the betrayal is so profound. Forgiveness might come someday, in some distant future, but trust? That's shattered permanently. Our parents have struggled. They love both their daughters. But they saw the undeniable proof of Emily's malicious intent. They're in minimal contact with her, urging her to seek professional help to deal with her issues, her jealousy, her anger. Whether she does or not is up to her. Mark and I focused on building our new life together. Our marriage started with a real trial by fire, but it only made us stronger, our bond deeper. We learned early on that we could face anything, as long as we faced it together. My revenge, if you can even call it that, wasn't about stooping to her level. It was about refusing to be her victim. It was about exposing the truth, protecting my happiness, and moving forward with dignity. Looking back, I am still, in many ways, speechless. Speechless that sibling rivalry could fester into such a destructive force. Speechless at the cruelty she was capable of. But I'm also speechless with gratitude for Mark, for my parents' ultimate support, and for the friends who stood by me. My wedding day wasn't the fairy tale I'd always imagined, but it was real. And in its own scarred, imperfect way, it was a victory. A victory for truth, for love, and for the courage to stand up to a darkness I never expected to find so close to home. So, that's my story. It's a hard one to tell, and even harder to have lived through. The damage Emily did to our family is something we'll be dealing with for a long, long time. But as I said, it didn't break us. If anything, it taught me the true meaning of resilience, and the importance of surrounding yourself with people who genuinely love and support you. What do you think? Did I do the right thing by exposing her plot publicly at the wedding? Or would you have handled it differently? I'd be really interested to read your perspectives in the comments below. These situations are so complex, and there's rarely a perfect answer, is there? Thank you for listening to my story. If you found this compelling, or if it resonated with you in any way, please give this video a thumbs up, it really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on future stories. Hopefully, they'll be a little less dramatic. But hey, life is full of surprises, right? Take care, everyone, and remember to cherish the genuine relationships in your life.